Are you looking to start your own podcast to get your ministry's message out there? Well, sit back and relax, because in this episode, we're going to teach you how to do it in 5 steps and in less than 20 minutes. You've got a dream to glorify God and make your mark on the world. Maybe you want to grow a business, start a ministry, or become a better servant leader. Whichever level in life you want to hit, I believe that God's calling all of us towards something greater than where we are now. So join me as I document my journey to learn how to grow an online ministry in ways that are effective, biblical, and aren't stuffed with complicated religious or business mumbo-jumbo. My name is Alec Kassan, and welcome to the Digital Ministry Mastermind Podcast. Hey, what is going on, guys? It is Alec here with The Current Christian. Ooh, I mixed it up a little bit. So, podcasts. You listen to them, everyone enjoys them, and they are an amazing thing. We've been addicted to listening to the voices of others ever since the beginning of time. Pretty much ever since the beginning, when God said, "Hey, let there be light." And, being able to share your voice to capture the thoughts of others in a format that allows for global distribution at your own fingertips is mind-blowing. Not only can it help to increase your influential reach, but it can also help to give you access to speak with people who you may never have had the opportunity to speak with before. And it can help to further establish you as a leader in your ministry or your market. But, this episode won't be going into the details of how a podcast can be beneficial for you or your business or ministry. I'm just going to assume that you'll want to start a podcast anyway. So if you're looking to get on the podcast bandwagon, I thought I would share my own advice for how I started the Digital Ministry Mastermind podcast and give it to you in less than 20 minutes. How does that sound? Well, when it comes to starting a podcast, you should be able to answer a few questions. The first question you should answer is, what big result are you obsessed with? Being able to define the results that you're trying to achieve in your ministry or your Christ-centered business is crucial for listeners. It's like being able to describe, the overarching plot to a TV show. It's the thing that gets people coming back for more and more. And it also helps you to kind of keep your content consistent. Because if your content isn't consistent, you'll only make your audience kind of confused and probably frustrated at times. And it would be like trying to go to the movies, see a romantic comedy, but it ends up being like an action movie instead. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mind very much. But, if I'm with my significant other, my wife, she might be like, "Oh, babes, I wanted to see." Now, actually, she would probably prefer the action movie as well. Who am I kidding? But a great example of knowing kind of like the overarching theme of a podcast would be just like in the intro thing. I talk about how I am just quite literally just documenting my journey as I'm learning things to further grow and establish my own ministry, which is the Current Christian ministry. And, once you have physically written out your answer to the question of what big result are you obsessed with, then we can move on to the second question, which is, what are you trying to learn? Now, you might be thinking, wait a second, why would I tell people what I'm trying to learn when I could just teach what I already know? Well, the answer is kind of like a two-parter. The first part is that publishing content is much easier when you are documenting instead of creating. Listen to the last episode. You see, when you create, you need to make something out of nothing. But when you document, you're simply just journaling what it is that you're doing. And the second part is that when you're sharing what you are learning, not only do you learn the material better, but it makes it easier for people to follow you along the journey to reach the big result that you're obsessed with as well. It's kind of like, hey guys, join me on the journey. It's going to be a lot of fun. And it becomes something that, they can kind of attach themselves onto. And rather than have it be a thing where they feel like you're telling them what to do, it's kind of like, nah, we're all on this together. And I know for the most part, my episodes, I'm kind of telling what I'm learning, but it's like I'm learning this stuff as well. I'm applying it. And for any of you guys who aren't following me on social media, you can be applying these things as well and reach out and be like, "Hey bro, like that thing that you said that worked out really well. Or be like, hey, I tried that thing and I found another way that works even better. Like, boom, now everyone's benefiting. Because there's even stuff where it's like I'll post stuff in these episodes, and I may find things that do work slightly better. But the only way you could get that updated information is by either continuing to listen to the podcast, maybe subscribe, or you follow me on other platforms as well, where I'm posting more and more up-to-date information every day. So once you got that second question answered of what are you trying to learn, now the third and final question that you got to be able to answer before starting your podcast is, who are you speaking to? Who is your ideal audience? You should be able to describe your audience in a way where when you're talking about them, they feel like you're speaking right to them. Are they college students? Then write college students. Are they pregnant women? Then, write pregnant women as your audience. But the more specific the audience, the more personal your content will be, and the more attached the demographic will feel towards your message. So after the three questions are answered, and I'll say them again, the first one is, what big result are you obsessed with? The second one is, what are you trying to learn? And the third is, who are you speaking to? Basically, like, who is your ideal audience? So after you have those three questions answered, we're going to actually use those to craft your introduction. So for example, the answer that I had for question 1 is that I'm obsessed with trying to glorify God and make a mark in the world by helping others. And then the answer I put for question 2 is that I'm trying to learn how to grow my ministry and become a better servant leader. And then the answer I put for question 3 is that my audience are Christian men and women who want to grow as leaders and grow their business or ministry without needing to know all that complicated theology or the terminology that comes with like business or like ministry things. And like once I had those 3 answers written out, after doing a bit of brainstorming and multiple drafts, the intro that I created is actually the literal intro that you hear at the beginning of the podcast. I'm not going to say it because you already heard it, but it's that whole thing of like, you've got to dream and glorify God and make your mark on the world. Like that's like, it came from answering those 3 questions. How cool is that? So your intro, it does not have to be in the exact order of the questions. It doesn't even need to be the exact phrasing that you used for answering the questions, but just use the responses that you put and play with the material that you have. It's like Legos. You get to make your own fun thing out of it. But before we finish the intro, you should make sure to introduce yourself and the name of the podcast. So a few things that do work well is using terminology that your ideal audience is going to identify with. So I know that the people who are going to really identify with me on the deepest level, they're going to understand every single part of the title. So digital ministry mastermind. So some of the people, or a vast majority of people who I do want to reach, are Christians. So I've got ministry. If you look at the thumbnail, ministry is written in big letters because people see that, and my audience who I would want to listen to me are going to see the word ministry and be like, that caught my eye. I might listen to this. And then if they were to read the title and see digital ministry, they're like, oh yeah, like I do stuff online. I want to listen to that. And it's like, because I'm speaking to people from my perspective of being a guy who has a digital ministry. And then that last part, mastermind, that's a term that's like typically used for people who are more in like the personal development, like business growth kind of field area. So if they even have somewhat of an idea of what the term mastermind is referring to, that is like, digital ministry mastermind. I know the people who see that title and identify with that are people who I would just love to hang out with in person, get to collaborate and stuff, because that would be the perfect ideal audience member for me. So like keep that in mind when you are coming up with your own title as well. So at this point, you know your audience, you know what your show is about, you have your intro written out, and you got the name created. So you are like 98% like further than most people are who have just said like, oh yeah, I just want to start a podcast. Like you are significant, like at this point, significantly further than a majority of people who just simply want to start a podcast. And to help you get that last little 2% further, here is what I recommend. The first thing you should do is find a website. You got to find a website to host your podcast on. Now, I'm not talking about Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I mean, you have to find a website. Like I use this one called Red Circle. This is a shameless promo towards Red Circle. They're not paying me or nothing. I just really like their platform because they allow me, at least, they allow you to upload your podcast episode and it will automatically be distributed to every single popular podcast platform that's on the internet. And this is both time saving and just simpler than having to make 5 profiles on 5 platforms. And then instead of just uploading one MP3 file to one website, you got to upload it 5 times, 5 different websites. It's too much. So I would recommend that if you are interested in seeing which platform works best for you, you could just start by looking up Red Circle or Anchor. That's a good one. Except when people who use Anchor, they always promote Anchor in their podcast. And I wasn't a fan of that. Red Circle doesn't make me promote them at all. This is probably the first time I've ever mentioned them. But, those are some, you can just look up podcast hosting platforms on Google and, some stuff will come up. So look that up. Find a website to host your podcast on. And now at this point, you were like me and you started creating your profile on your website. Let's say it's Red Circle. And as soon as you found out about the site, you hit a point where you need to make the cover for your podcast. Uh-oh, how do you do that? Do you hire a designer? What do you do? Well, one thing you could do, you could use the website Canva. And it's great because it's both free and it's just flippin' awesome when it comes to providing templates that you can use to make your graphics. But here's a tip that I recommend you do first before making any cover art. When you go into Canva, you got to create a design that has custom dimensions. And you got to set the dimensions to 1400 by 1400. I had made the mistake of using 1080p by 1080p dimensions. And this is typical for Instagram. But the unfortunate part is that Red Circle requires you to post a cover photo that is no less than 1400 by 1400. So the higher the number is that you use for the dimensions, just make sure they're the same so it comes out as a square shape. But the higher the number is, the more high quality the photo, unless you're putting photos into it that aren't as high quality. I'm not going to go too in depth. It could get very complicated, but it doesn't need to be. I just recommend 1440, 1400 by 1400. And just use templates that are on there. And if you want some more inspiration for how to do your cover photo, look at podcasts that you like listening to and see how they do their photos. Boom. I'm not saying to copy. I'm just saying see what works for them, see what you like from them, and adapt it to your own. So now you've got a profile photo and you got your profile set up. That is fantastic. The last step is you just got to record your first episode. So what should this episode be about? Ooh, it's kind of nerve-wracking, isn't it? Well, make it about the podcast. Start with the intro, share your hopes and dreams of where you see the podcast going, and talk about what inspired you to start in the first place. And after you record it on your iPhone or your computer, just simply upload it and just follow the instructions that the website says so that it gets on there safely. So that, my friend, is how you can create a podcast, and pretty much told you how to do it in less than 20 minutes. And I hope that this was helpful to getting you started so you can get your message out there into the world. And I want to know, what's your podcast title going to be? Because, I want to check it out when you make it. So feel free to reach out to me and let me know, and I will be your first audience to listen. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you found that anything in it was super helpful, then please, I ask that you share your support by subscribing. And if you think that this episode would benefit any of your friends, family members, people that you know, then please, I invite you to share this with them or any prior episodes with them as well. And hey, God is calling all of us towards something greater than where we are now. And I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Are you a Christian leader looking to develop the skills needed to maximize the fruitfulness in your daily walk with Christ? Do you want to overcome the burden of not living life to the fullest and fully step into your God-given calling? If you do, then you should get a copy of my book, Planting Your Purpose, a 20-day guide to discover God's calling. It's not just another devotional book. Planting Your Purpose is your 20-day guide that will provide you with the strategies, tools, and insights to turn things around immediately. You will learn how to avoid the top 5 mistakes Christians make when pursuing their calling in life. You'll develop more joy in your walk with Jesus and unlock the secrets to mastering integrity. And by the end of 20 days, not only will you know your calling, but you'll have an even greater sense of fulfillment and confidence in your life. Everywhere, Christians are raving about this amazing new guide to discover their God-given calling. Get your copy by clicking the link in the show notes or by going to plantingyourpurpose.com. That's plantingyourpurpose.com.